Welcome to the second day of the Festival of Learning. I'm Samuel Burke and super excited that the Don't F This Up edition, Don't F Up the alts, the memes, NFTs. These sessions are going so great. If you didn't just see Kevin Kelly along with Sergio Silva talking about their biggest crypto F ups, make sure you check out this session, that session after this session, because now we have your Degen trade doctors. That's OSF and Mando. Pretty dynamic duo, well known in and outside the Real Vision world. Welcome to you guys. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm back home. I just recently moved house, so I'm in Portugal. I actually don't know where OSF is. He looks like he's not in his usual setup.
I'm in a small town called Sutton Coldville, which is near Birmingham, in the Midlands of the UK. Yeah, very well.
Lovely this time of year.
Very lovely this time of year.
Much sunnier there than in Portugal, but can't judge much here in London. This is a really cool session that we have set. We've had people sending in their trades that they're nervous, excited, holding on for dear life over. But before we get to that and your input on them, which is really what folks want, just want to make a quick announcement. We have something very special coming soon here from Real Vision and Friends. The team isn't letting me say too much for now, but if you want to be the first to know, you're going to want to sign up right now at realvision.com/waitlist. OSF and Mando have been tweeting about it. We promise not to keep you waiting for too long whatsoever. I'll just say one thing, though. There is a particular reason why we chose this session to tease this. So realvision.com/waitlist, and we'll have a lot of news coming up on that very quickly. So we already have folks who've submitted their trades, but just right here in the comment section, you can chat with us and let us know what you want OSF and Mando to weigh in on. It would help to know what this trade is, a current or past trade. Are you wanting to jump back in? What's your time horizon, your target, your thesis, your comments? So those are the parameters. We'll give people a little chance to do that. But OSF and Mando, if you can just give us a little bit of background, how did you guys go from TradFi to this Degen duo? What's the kind of background story? You want to start? OSF?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we kind of came into this as friends who came in via the NFT market, and then really just stuck around. Like we got a few good trades in the NFT space. We managed to catch some of the NFT art as it exploded, and then into some of the collectibles that have become kind of ubiquitous in the space now. And then we stuck around during the whole of the bear market in crypto. We increasingly became more interested in memes and meme culture. That was what was really driving a lot of what was going on in NFTs as well. And I would say over the last 12, 18 months, that's been predominantly where we've been focused. It feels like that is probably the strongest sector, at least this year in crypto, and it's been interesting to trade through this cycle.
And OSF, how did you end up hugging with Mando?
We were both traders at Barclays. Michael joined the year after I joined. He was actually kind of like my little junior guy for a few months until he until he outgrew me.
2 years, man.
2 years, yeah, 2 years. I gave him all sorts of like menial tasks to do for the first few months. But we sat next to each other for 5 years, and then we were at Barclays together for about 10 years. There's still a debate to this day as to who got who into crypto first. I think Michael claims it was him, but the message history goes back to June 2020 when I first said buy Bitcoin. So I'll try and claim that myself. But yeah, we both kind of like stumbled into crypto while we were still at Barclays, trading high yield and distressed credit. And yeah, we just realized it was like a way more interesting market than what we were doing, and just dived full time into it at the end of 2021.
Well, I've got to say, we did a crypto session with you in our VIP group here in London a couple months ago, and it was one of the coolest evenings I've ever experienced at Real Vision, because it's a really deeply thoughtful and just deep understanding group of people as it regards to crypto, and you just took them to the next level. People were just dicing up their trades, and it was just an incredible learning journey. And I think that's exactly what we're going to do here. So again, feel free to submit your trades in the comment section and chat section rather, and we're going to jump right into the first one. So this is from Gold Member. He's from our Pro Crypto tier. His trade, he bought captains at 4.4 ETH. He's currently in this trade. His time horizon is about 1 year, target 5x. His thesis, #1 NFT in Asia, strong team, well-known brand, good rollout on previous projects. OSF and Mando, my question is, am I going to get wrecked or still a good hold on for dear life trade? Who wants to pick up the first part of this answer?
I can take a look at that. I mean, there are the positive things around that whole meme land trade is they have a lot of money. So most of these their raise was done when ETH, I think, was like at 1,500 or 2,000 area. So the treasury of that team is very, very high, and they're able to expand into various different things. They also have a rollout of an L2 now, so they've rolled out this meme chain essentially, which I believe the long-term thesis of that is to be some sort of meme coin chain, or at least more of like a Degen chain, which you can take part in. And then they have the money to explore different things. So I think even this week they announced they're going to do a runes, and that if you're staking your assets or you're staking your meme, you're going to get access to that new coin. So they're very well funded. They aren't necessarily trying to push crazy amounts of utility, other than everything is kind of a meme. This is the 9gag team. So they live and they've always been involved in memes. So that can seem pretty dicey, I think, at times. Like things can fall pretty dramatically. What I would say is that ETH NFTs, this cycle, just as a sector, they've probably been one of the worst performing sectors around. So you can buy the best project in ETH NFTs and you can still massively underperform. Like Pudgy Penguins would probably be considered the biggest winner in ETH NFTs over the last year. And they've kind of done a 2x and feel not that great right now. So as a sector, they're it's very, very unloved versus, let's say, Ordinals, which has been the Bitcoin version, even Solana and Solana meme coins and Solana NFTs. So I like it, but I don't love the sector. And I still think it would be a little bit difficult to imagine like a 5x multiple on this cycle.
So OSF, it's pretty clear, Mandus. All right, good, but maybe better off other places. You concur?
Yeah, I do concur. I think you can break that trade down into two different thought streams. And the first thought stream would be like the micro factors that Michael mentioned about the team, etc., the team treasury. And the second thought stream would be more on a macro level, which is what's your view on ETH NFTs as a sector within the whole Web3 and crypto space? And for the same reasons as Michael mentioned, I'm less constructive on that this cycle, because I think you have a handful of narratives which become the strong narratives, and for NFTs it's quite clearly ordinals this cycle. So you're battling, you're taking an uphill battle, and it's a very tough thing to flip and outperform. And I think, if your return expectation is 3x or a 5x, there are probably lots of liquid tokens that can give you a 3 to 5x return profile, which probably have much less risk than I think NFTs do, and more liquidity. So my personal preference is, if you were, this guy was like, I think this is a 10x or a 20x or a 30x trade, I'd be like, yeah, sure, like that's good risk reward. But if you're just playing for a 5x, I think there are other tokens, even just something like Solana, for example, which could potentially have a similar return profile, but a much, much lower risk profile.
Love this. I love how tangible this is, but of course, these are specific horizons for this particular member of our Pro Crypto tier. So keep that in mind. His time horizons and his goals may be quite different from what somebody else is looking at, but the insight is very valuable. I want to move on to the next trade and see what our doctors say. Elrond44, also from our Pro Crypto tier. One of my problem trades has been Hivemapper token. Entry point was around 12 cents and seemed to have a narrative early on in the cycle, but it's continuously been selling off since the January high. I want to hold on to it for the cycle into crypto fall, but it's continuously has selling pressure from token unlocks. I'm wondering if it's one of those trades that may have more headache than profit near the end of the cycle from this. It's a current trade time horizon, as they said, sometime into macro fall. Target to take profits near end of cycle thinking, April, May 2025. Original thesis, Elron44 says, was the narratives and DPIN around sounds very appealing. Issue has been constant sell pressure over past few months and token unlocks. And just adding, mainly want an objective view of the trade without any personal bias from my end that may skew the data as I see it. Quite a mature trading approach. So Hivemapper, Mando, you want to start this one as well?
Yeah, sure. So I think Hivemapper really blew up kind of when he got in. So it was about 6 months ago. And when DeepIn was becoming a very, very strong narrative, a bunch of the projects were on Solana, and that was driving some of the interest in Solana in general. You obviously have Helium, which is like the mobile network. I believe Hivemapper does like mapping throughout the world. My view on this, without going to the depths of Hivemapper, because I'm not as like in the weeds about that project. Again, on a macro basis, I would say DeepIn as a sector it's not that it's become less interesting, it's just hasn't performed as well as other sectors. There's less people looking at it. Helium has been like the one big thing that people have really reached for as something that is going to be interesting. But and Hivemapper, I guess, at the same time, but they haven't been like knockout stories, so it hasn't really sustained interest. And when people talk about DeepIn, that was really a few months ago. So even as the sector, if it keeps ticking along, it's become less relevant. I think probably RWAs has become a bigger sector in terms of crypto's applications in real life. So like the securitization of real life assets has become a bigger thing than this sort of DeepIn stuff. But the second thing I would say here is that tokenomics have really, really mattered over the last couple of months. This is part of the reason why the meme coin sector has done much better, is because generally their tokenomics are fully vested tokens, or at least 90% vested. And if you were to look at the top 100 or even the top 300 coins in crypto over the last 3 months, it's really been the ones which have bad tokenomics or which have a low current market cap versus total market cap, which have really underperformed. You can see this in places like gaming. You could have seen this in DeFi, but it's happened in particular across crypto. And so DeepIn, with that sort of tokenomics, I'm unsurprised it hasn't been that loved. I would say over the short term, we've had also a bit of a weakness in Solana, which probably hasn't helped like Solana ecosystem coins. I do think Solana, I'm super bullish. I think it's going to go many multiples from here. I think if you have the right time horizon, that sort of trade could still perform. Like these tokenomics will get better at some stage when these tokens start to divest. But at the same time, you could be in that trade for a long time, even with quote unquote good tech, or even with a lot of people using using the network, the DeepIn network. Then I think you could be in that trade and still be slightly frustrated as other things go higher. So I think I could still be long-term bullish on that, but short-term, I still think it has some of the hallmarks of stuff that probably won't perform.
So it sounds like it could be another case of your investment might be better off somewhere else, Mando.
Yeah, like for me, if I was to buy a Solana ecosystem coin with that sort of profile, or I could just buy an L1 like Solana, I'd much rather buy Solana. Or even like levered Solana, I'd probably put it into like low levered. Like I feel like you're going to get better risk reward profile in just because Solana's down like 30% now since its high. That probably could rebound to its high pretty quickly. The ecosystem plays in all of these are always a little bit more difficult. That you can see that from all the recent Solana airdrops. They've all done pretty terribly actually out of the gate. Jupiter's done okay, but all the ones in the last month or so, they really haven't done well. So ecosystem plays are always a little bit difficult. And I think I would still prefer an L1 here, even from a risk reward standpoint.
OSF, we saw you nodding your head in agreement there, but any difference between you and Mando and what he laid out there?
No, I completely agree. Something my first boss on the trading floor always used to tell me, and Michael, we had the same boss, was it's important to understand the fundamentals of whatever you're trading, whatever position you take, but it's really important to respect the technicals. And something might have the best story in the world, but if there is an ongoing seller of size, that is going to be the main thing that dictates the market price. And so in crypto, you often see older coins underperform newer coins, and that's because older coins have token unlocks, they have these vesting schedules, they have poor tokenomics. And imagine you're a VC or an angel investor and you invested into Hivemapper or a different token, right at the gates in the seed round. You're now sitting here, and even with the token down or underperforming, you're still probably up something like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100x on these trades, right? So there is no reason why these people aren't sitting there just continuously selling, because they're up a lot and they will have a large amount of the supply because they got in at such a low valuation. So it's a very, very hard train to get in front of, and it has to have a really, truly incredible story to outweigh that. Solana is a coin which has VC investment and token unlocks, etc. But look at how strong that narrative has had to be for that to perform well. Do you see what I mean? So it really has to be the best story in the world if the tokenomics aren't great and you're currently in a period of unlocks. And so I personally prefer to just completely stay away from any token which is in a period of vesting or unlocks. And I think you're much better off playing new tokens which are 6 months out or 1 year out away from the unlocks, which give you more time for it to have an asset without that sell pressure. And the other thing I would say is, look, we are probably something like 6 or 7 months into pretty aggressive price action on crypto, where lots of things are going higher, lots of different things are going higher. And if by now a token you've owned since December or January hasn't gone higher, I think you have to reevaluate, because there are dozens of things you can just put that into and you'll be making those returns rather than sitting there hoping for something to bounce back while other people who are early to that trade are sitting there selling.
Some pretty clear views there for Elrond. 40 might be hard to stomach, but sometimes got to make that adjustment. And just a shout out to Ralph Humphrey, a close Real Vision community member joining us now. And to the next trade, David Rolls, who's a member of our Plus community. That's really our education tier. He says this is about stop losses and how reliable they are for smaller cap tokens. I feel pretty confident about my Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana that my stop loss will get triggered even during high volatility. But how reliable is a stop loss on DEXes, decentralized exchanges? How else can I protect my trading account if stop loss may not be triggered during a big price move? So he says this is something he's in currently, next 1 to 30 days. And this is about trading generally, but the thesis is mainly linked to momentum trading and not the deeper macro analysis. OSF, should we have you kick this one off?
Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, I think it's in reference to the fact that if you set a stop loss on a low market cap coin on a DEX, there may not be enough liquidity or maybe too fast for it to actually get executed.
Exactly.
So you may still own the position as it goes through your stop loss price, which I think is something that happens a lot because, the volumes on small cap coins are very tiny compared to the volumes on the majors, etc. And there's way less, there's way more volatility. I think if you have a stop loss on something, there are lots of small cap meme coins, etc., that will still have perps that trade on most of the centralized exchanges. And I think those markets tend to be a lot more liquid and those stop losses tend to be a lot more reliable. But putting a stop loss on a DEX and a small cap coin, I think it's 50-50 because those wicks can be aggressive, but the liquidity at those time can be very small. So you may get there and you may not be able to actually trigger your trade. So I personally wouldn't trade small cap tokens with automatic stop losses and rely on them. I would trade small cap tokens with mental stop losses, and when it gets to that level, you just take the liquidity at the time to get out. But I wouldn't depend on automatic stop losses there because it's not reliable, basically.
Yeah, that lack of volume can make it difficult. Mando, similar view?
Yeah, I just you can only really do this on Solana, or maybe I think Arbitrum have some tools for you to have like stop losses, either via bots or via things like Jupiter. I think you can have like stop losses. That being said, I would never really trust them for a DEX. I think you get very gappy price action generally, and I would be very, very wary of like slippage on execution for something like that. That being said, that's not to say you just can't trade like that. All I would then say is that if you are going to put on small cap trades, don't assume you can do like a 10% stop loss target. Like you've got to think, right, if I'm going to get into this trade, I've got to think about the multiple that's going to have to get me out. Has got to be higher, because your stop loss you can never be sure of. So I would never really get into small cap trades where you want to limit your downside unless you know you have a very, very high upside. So instead of assuming you can get out at a 5% or 10% dip, assume that you're only going to get out at a 20% dip, and then assume that your multiple of your return has got to be that much higher for you to even want to get into the trade. So you just have to adjust your trade, and you'll probably pick better trades, knowing that you can't really stop some of the downside then.
All right. I think we're 3 for 3 for keeping it quite real. We're not just bringing in OSF and Mando to make people feel good today, but that's exactly why
it's not our job.
Sean from our Pro Crypto tier says, I'm heavily invested in Solana, but starting to see a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt on social. How do you know when it's time to get out? He's currently in time horizon 1 to 2 years, target outsized returns. Honestly, people I trust in this space, we're all talking super positively about Solana, Sean says. Mando, what to do?
Solana's been a very, very interesting trade. I'm still incredibly bullish, but you have to be realistic here. Like, part of the things that drove Solana's outperformance was the huge growth in meme coins and their DeFi TVL and their stablecoin transfers. For the last month or so, there were a lot of issues with spamming on the network, which they seem to have come to a solution for, at least in the last week. Like, the number of ticket failures at one stage was about 75%, and now it's down to single digits. And they had an outage, if you remember, a couple months ago, and that was their first outage for basically a year. Once they get Firedancer up and running, there will no longer be one point of failure for Solana. So I think that will be a very, very positive narrative, at least for the strength of the network. That being said, you have to be realistic. Like, the last month for Solana meme coins has been pretty horrific. I would say a lot of them are down a lot, including like the big ones that have run up, like things like WIF. So I think you have to understand that narrative does need time, probably a little bit of time to heal and come back, in terms of lots and lots of users using the network. So I don't think this is one which just immediately rebounds to the highs, because you have to appreciate that the drivers of it have become less strong over that period. That being said, like, I just think it's so much stronger in many other ways to the L1s that are coming out. It has a flourishing ecosystem for many different things: stable coins, deep in RWAs, DeFi, NFTs, meme coins. It's kind of hit on every single one. And you'll always hear, like, I think Phantom's coming out with a new faster version with its Sonic upgrade, which will probably be faster in the short term until Firedancer comes out. Even if you get another faster blockchain, it takes a long time to create a flourishing ecosystem in all those different parts. So I think I'm still super bullish on Solana, but I would be very, very unsurprised if it takes a while to get back to its recent high. mainly because that meme coin story needs time to rebuild. And also what I was speaking about earlier with the airdrops, a lot of the recent airdrops in Solana, which has been one of the main reasons why people also get into the story, have also slightly disappointed. Now that's been disappointment for all new coins, all new airdrops across every single ecosystem. But that probably again needs some time to heal. You get one big airdrop happening again on Solana, again, people will probably come back. So I'm still as bullish as ever. I think you have to appreciate that this isn't just going to be a quick fix back to 200, 220, whatever it was. Yeah, I think it's still one of the best stories in crypto.
You said a while. What does a while mean? Sean talked about his target being 1 to 2 years. Is that a while for Mando?
Oh, yeah. Look, I think Solana could get to, 500, 600 over the course of the next 18 months. So, but at the same time, it has straight lined since the start of this year. And I think you have to appreciate that it's probably going to be a little bit more choppy until those stories become a bit healthier. The thing is, the one thing that Solana has going for it is that the alternatives haven't really taken up the mantle and crushed it. Like there was a lot of talk about Base coming up and being the main place where people would also be doing a lot of the stuff they've been doing on Solana. It was strong for a little bit and then it hasn't really followed through. Although I'm not saying Base is dead. I'm just saying it hasn't really been as strong as people were predicting it would be. There's now a lot of talk about the Bitcoin ecosystem coming out. Like Runes is going to be the next big thing, which is going to be the liquid protocol, liquid token protocol on Bitcoin. Let's see. That's coming out, I think, tomorrow. And we will get to know if everyone starts doing Degen stuff on Runes or maybe on some of the Bitcoin L2s. I'm not as sold on those stories. I still think Solana, like, yes, it has, like, some of these stories haven't been that well, but once you start going on to ETH or some of the ETH L2s or even some of the other L1s that have tried to take up the mantle, like, it's just not really the same experience. So people just admit they do just come back to Solana. So that's what makes me still think it's going to be a very, very strong story.
And OSF, if you were in a similar trade to Sean, would your time horizon be 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, I think my time horizon would be whatever you think, however long you think there is left in this cycle, because I think every cycle has like the darling token of that cycle that takes the most mind share and the most attention. And crypto certainly is an attention game. And this cycle that has been and will continue to be Solana. And so if you think, there's 1 to 2 years left in the cycle and you want to be long Sol as an expression of that, I think that's a good trade, because I do think Sol will be one of the best performers within the majors this cycle. I think it will outperform Bitcoin. I think it will outperform ETH. And it's kind of like, if you have a big bag of Bitcoin and ETH and you don't have any Sol, I would want to reallocate a lot of that to Sol as a higher beta way of expressing bullish crypto sentiment.
So we've got our next question coming in from John. He's part of our essential tier. That's for a lot of people who are just joining the Real Vision community for the first time. John says he's 22 years old and he has no clue, in caps, how he's meant to think about portfolio weightings when it comes to crypto. Best practice seems to be to cut some of your winners when they become too big a part of the portfolio. But is this just old school thinking and doesn't apply to crypto? So he's talking short-term, pay for the rest of college, but long-term wealth. So those are a lot of terms. Weighting, OSF?
So with regard to weighting, I think when you start off, you should have something like 70 to 80% of your portfolio in high conviction longs that are probably majors, that are liquid, that if Bitcoin goes to 100K, for sure they will perform. So whether that's Bitcoin itself, whether it's ETH, whether it's Sol, just some of this like more well-known, safer stuff. But as we know, crypto, you have the ability to make those 10x's, etc., and you need to dip down the risk curve to have that. And I think something like 20 to 30% of your portfolio should comprise your degen trades, if you like. With regard to the question on should I be cutting my winners, now that's a very tough question, and I experienced some of that this year with some meme coins going crazy and like overtaking my positions in ETH or in Sol, etc. In my opinion, when something gathers momentum in crypto in a bull market, I would really not underestimate how far it can go. And that's something that I think has to have demonstrated momentum over a period of a few weeks. I'm not talking about, oh, this is really rallying today and then tomorrow suddenly it's gone to zero. Like, it has to demonstrate consistent momentum over a few weeks, ideally a few months. And once it has, you can have more comfortability and conviction in holding that trade longer. And that's when I think you're actually not really meant to cut your winners. You're actually meant to let them ride a little bit. And I would say, if you're up big on a random meme coin, take out some money, take out your principal, take out 2 or 3 times your principal if you can, but leave yourself a decent chunk in the trade, because there's a good chance you just picked the right trade or the right thing that is going to go crazy. And the worst thing you can do is cut it, and cut it completely if you like, and leave yourself having foregoing like a ton of profits. So I think take some profits and winners, but don't feel like you have to rebalance them such that they become a minority part of your portfolio. I really don't think you need to do that. I think you should just let winners ride in the cycle if they've demonstrated strong momentum over a sustained period of time.
And any examples of that where you've done that well or not so well in this cycle, OSF?
Yeah, like Whiff Dog with Hat was a good one for me. I got quite lucky. I bought it in December, middle of December. So that I think I bought it at like a 25 million market cap. So I think once it got to $1 billion, I took off 25% of the trade. Once it got to $2 billion, I took off another 25% of the trade. And I think I took off another 25% to turn it into Sol around the similar level as well. So I just kind of took off a quarter of it at certain price points. And I've left myself with 25%. And I mean, it's back down now, but that 25%, when it doubled or tripled, became a large position again. And it became a large position in terms of its weighting within my portfolio. But I see that's a situation now where, because I've taken out multiples of the money that I put in and left myself with a pretty large moon bag, if you like, is the technical term for it, I can kind of like, I'm not really worrying about it going back down or round tripping, because I've kind of made the profits and taken it outright. But if it goes up lows and does really well, I still have some exposure to it. And so, I mean, I've made mistakes on that in the past. Like, I made mistakes on that in 2021 from just selling the entire thing or rebalancing the entire thing. And when it did another 10x, I just didn't make the money I should have. And so this time I've been super cognizant about, like, I think 25% is a good level. If something's done in 10x and you take out 25%, you're taking out some good profits there. You're taking out some substantial profits, and you're leaving yourself with plenty of skin in the game to do well if it keeps going higher. But I had to let that trade run for a few weeks to really know that it was going to be the trade. Like, I had no idea at the beginning, and that's why just taking a little bit off over time is a smart way to do it, I think.
Mando, any examples you've had from this cycle where you've done the weighting well, or maybe not so well, from Michael from our plus tier?
Yeah, I just wouldn't agree with that comment at all. Basically, that you should like sell tokens that have done well and buy ones that have done badly. Like, I think not just in crypto. I think that's just not how you should trade at all. Like, if you're going to put a weighted average of the S&P, for example, they hold on to the winners, right? The S&P holds on to its winners. That'd be like selling Nvidia, selling Apple, selling all the Magnificent Seven as they went higher. This is not. You were meant to hold on to your winners and consider cutting your losers. Now. So,
but, I mean, that gets back into the time frame, though. He's talking about medium term, which I think probably.
So I think medium term
the
as
narrative
well.
you're talking about.
I think a medium term too. Like, Bitcoin has outperformed, I think, every single altcoin in the top 200 bar 6, which tells you that if you just held the biggest coin, you probably would have done better than most people who are dancing around in trying to like pick a equal weighted portfolio of all the other coins. So I think you are meant to hold on to your winners. You should consider things that are underperforming instead of cutting them. Like, you could basically create very similar to how the S&P runs and go like, right, here are the top 20 altcoins which aren't stable coins. I'm going to have them as a portfolio, and as they go higher, like, you can put them in the current weighting they are by market cap, and then hold that as a portfolio over the next year. And if something drops out of that top 20, you cut it and you add the thing that comes in. That's an interesting way of doing a portfolio in crypto. Like, that would be like the S&P of crypto, where you are automatically holding onto the winners and you're automatically cutting cutting your losers. I don't see how that portfolio does badly. Like that's basically more a bet on the crypto being relevant in 20 years. And that'd be very, very similar to like owning the S&P rather than owning the stocks that were in the S&P 30 years ago and not and like selling the ones that do well and buying the ones that haven't done well. Like that's not how I would look at crypto. I would agree with what OSF said there though. Like if you're not thinking about majors or building like a portfolio that way, and you're more thinking about meme coins or altcoins, some of these do have a life cycle. So I think if you've done like a 10x or 100x in a trade which you don't think is going to be relevant in 3 to 5 years, or it's more just been a crazy pump essentially from a very, very low market cap, then I think you do have to be more cognizant of the idea that this probably has a life cycle over even the course of this cycle. And then I would take profits, particularly in meme coins. But if you're just peripherally to crypto, I don't even know how to get involved. I think one of the smartest things to do is to look at it like the like creating an S&P style index, but for crypto, having a bit of Solana, having a bit of ETH, having a bit of Bitcoin, probably having some of the other top 20 altcoins, but really maybe even just those top 3. Or maybe just the L1s, and then have them in your portfolio of the weighting of their market cap. And then if any of them drop out of, let's say, your top 10 L1s, you could you replace it with the one that's come in.
John from the Essential Tier, just following up to his question, saying I'm pretty deep into crypto and think there's a lot more to come, even if things are shit this week. OSF, there's just a little bit of a difference in perspective between you and Mando. So any follow up there?
No, I would agree mostly with what Michael said, really. I think he's right. We always talk about buying low and selling high as traders, and it's still important to do that. But I think that's not to be confused with buying tokens that have dropped a lot versus selling tokens that are up a lot. I think within whatever you pick, you want to buy low and sell high. But I think it's it's a very like normal human thing to do, to be like, oh, all these tokens are up and this one's down, I should buy this one. And sometimes that does work, but there's a reason why the ones that are up, and there's a reason why people want to buy them. And I mean, I would have, this is the way I think I actually would have traded in my old job. Like I did have a habit to like buy things that were depressed and just be patient, and eventually they would come good. But the momentum in this market is just so strong, and it's just really hard to fade that, I think. And it's often an easier trade just to join something that has the narrative, that has the momentum once you can identify it early. It's an easier win sometimes than trying to be contrarian and thinking, I'm going to stick my neck out and buy this thing that's underperformed. So that's my take on that.
There are some markets in general that lend themselves to mean reversion, and often those are bond markets or credit markets, because you get a pull to par, like things get repaid at the end. But crypto is not one of those markets. It doesn't just meme revert. If an L1 goes down, it doesn't automatically go back to where it was. In fact, it can just go down to 0. And if something goes up, it can continue to go exponential. Like look at the Bitcoin chart; it's an exponential chart. So, meme reversion is one of the big fallacies traders get into, I think, in crypto.
Michael from the Plus tier. Now we have his question. I feel like I'm the Jim Cramer of crypto, always getting in too late and then going through big drawdowns. Definitely partly because of FOMO. How do I rethink my strategy? He's an ongoing trader, medium term. Mando, you want to pick up that one? That's quite the unflattering comparison for a lot of folks in this audience.
I think a lot of people have that experience in crypto, if I'm honest. I think a lot of people come in, they get burnt, they just continue to get burnt. They read about these stories way too late. I would say that I think if you're going to be in crypto, to do it peripherally, let's say you do it on the side, it's not as easy as like getting involved in stocks. I think these stories can fall out of bed much more aggressively. They're often narrative driven rather than any fundamentals. You're not doing like discounted cash flow models. So if you're hearing it, you've often heard it because it's come down the pipe of some sort of pump push, so to speak. So I think people often they are somebody else's lunch by the time they get to hear it. So again, I would reevaluate and be like, right, why are you getting into crypto? Are you getting into it because you think you can make a 5x over the next 3 years? Or do you want to make a 10x over the next month or week? Because I think if you're going after a 10x over the next month, like you probably need to be focused on it all the time. And you need to be cognizant, that your ability to hit on those trades is also going to be not great, but you need to be, you need to be prepared to get beaten up a little bit and also be prepared to try and be early on stuff. Because if you're on crypto Twitter, 24/7, you probably will be able to catch a trade, maybe not the earliest, but before you were catching up before. But there are ways to make money in crypto where you can just chill. Like you could put it in stake Solana. You could put it in some, like a pair on GMX or something like that, and make a decent yield, as well as having some beta upside, and something could go up a 3 to 5x over the next few years, and that's still a great return. And although it might be less sexy, so to speak, like you're actually probably done much better than if you tried to make the 10x over the next month. So I would just reevaluate what you're trying to get into crypto for. And if you don't have the time to, really get those 10x narratives on the same day or like very, very early, then just reevaluate and you can still do really well from crypto, but you probably have to give up some of those like crazy lottery dreams that you had.
A little more context from Michael from our Plus tier, and I think this will help you, OSF, even understand more deeply what he's dealing with. I find it hard to keep up with everything happening, so I'm definitely swayed by what I see on Twitter, what's being talked about, etc. That feels like a real easy way to become the Jim Cramer of crypto.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is don't feel too hard on yourself for feeling like that or feeling like you're buying the top and selling the bottom and chopping yourself up, because I think lots of people do that. I even do it. I still do it now. I still FOMO into something or a sector that I'm not that familiar with, but I see lots of people are making money on, and I'm not fully engaged, and I end up just buying something based off second or third rate information, and it goes down, then I end up selling it, then it goes back up, and it's a very difficult strategy. And I think where I've done well, where the strategy that's worked well for me is like, okay, I have a top-down view on a theme or a sector. So let's say I'm bullish on Solana. I think Solana is going to be great this cycle. And then my next thought process is, okay, if I want to make something that's a bit more than a 2 or 3x and I want to chase a 10x or a 100x, how do I find the beta trade within that ecosystem? How do I find the thing that's going to act as like a levered soul? And that's the reason why I bought Whiff and Dog with Hat, because I think memes often act as like levered trades on their underlying ecosystems. And that process for me has worked well, because then it's like, well, I don't really have to keep up with Twitter all the time and be in all the different group chats and stuff and stay on top of different things and worry about like buying and selling. It's like I just have in my head 2 or 3 narratives that I'm very bullish on. I have exposure to those narratives, and if I feel like I want more bang for my buck, I'll do my best to identify the beta in those narratives, understanding and recognizing that they have higher risk, and put some chips in that. And then, make your darting around in different coins and chopping yourself up, make that as per the previous question, make that a minority part of your portfolio. Make that as like a 10% or 20% or whatever part of your portfolio, because let's be honest, we all like degenning and basically gambling or whatever, and we all have to keep ourselves entertained, but just don't make that your whole stack. Make that a smaller amount, so you satiate whatever those needs are, but your main core positions are still there and still performing well.
I like that. Have some fun, but keep with the fundamentals. Just a shout out to Phil and Ava joining us in the live chat, to close members of the RV community. Next one is from Yang for our trade doctors. He's part of our pro macro community. I always have one position I hold on to for too long with a loss. How to deal with that? He's into both crypto and macro, time frame about 2 years, but yeah, that one trade that you just keep on hanging on and hope, even though it's not there, Mando.
Yeah, it's tough. This is the toughest thing about crypto is this concept that you have to be quite brutal with your losses, and even on those, sometimes just randomly they'll just pump and do a 10x. But I think if you keep a system about how, you know, once it's gone past a certain level for any of your trades and you cut it after that, the great thing about crypto is, as much as it can be very painful to hold on to trades, there's always another 10x. There's always one round the corner. Like each week, there's always a trade where you're like, oh no, I wish I'd gone into that. And so the opportunity cost of capital is very, very, very high. So I do think you have to be very brutal with your losses, and it can be very, very painful. But at the same time, you just can't really cry about it that much, because if you're not there looking for the next one, like I think you're going to miss that there's so many opportunities in this space. So if you, like Ovi even said with the trade that's been underperforming so far this year, like you've probably got to take a look at yourself and go like, right, now's probably the perfect time to sell that. Everything is down. Every single altcoin in the whole market is probably down about 30 to 50% over the last month. I've got a second shot here at picking up a good narrative and getting rid of my bad narrative. So if you have any bad trades right now, I can't think of a better time to across the time run of this bull run, to now reevaluate them and think about now's the time to get involved, because great narratives are down 40% from their high.
I mean, this really gets into some of the deeper psychology of trading. And Yang, I would just say, check out some of the My Life in 4 Trades episodes with Maggie Lake hosting some of the best people in this space, talking about their 2 best and their 2 worst trades. The 2 best trades are always fun, sexy, and make you want to dream. The 2 worst trades are really where that deep learning comes in, because when you're down on your luck, when you've effed it up, and that's really where you do that deep learning. So I would check out, I mean, the one that always stands out to me is Tony Greer, because he very smartly chose one particular trade as one of his best and one of his worst. And when you see the arc of how this trade went, you really understand why. And also some of the sessions we do with Denise Schul. She's the character behind Wendy on Billions, but she's the true life Denise Schul, the true life Wendy. And she does the psychology of trading. And so some of the sessions, which you can just find on the platform now, and she'll have some upcoming ones, really help you work through with the psychology of that. OSF, any psychology you have to add there?
Yeah, funny story, actually. I bought my first stock when I was 18 in 2009, I think it was. And I bought it when it was already up like 1,700%, and I never sold it. I averaged down, and I actually still own it. Like 15 years later, I still own the same thing. So still holding on, for hoping on those Coca-Cola rumors. But the way that the psychology of these things work is that when you hold on to something for that long, you get very emotionally attached to it, and you're worried. You're worried that if I sell it, it's going to go higher. And the problem with that analysis is it fails to incorporate the fact that if you buy something else, that thing could go up. And, you know, let's say you hold X crypto and you sell X crypto to buy Y crypto, and Y crypto does a 3x, you're going to be like, oh, I'm pretty happy. But then if X crypto does a 2x, you're going to be really bummed. You're like, man, I held onto that thing for so long and it just did a 2x and I missed out on it. Even though you actually made more from swapping, right? So I think your analysis should be like, it shouldn't just be what happens if I sell this and this thing goes up this amount. It should be what happens if I sell this, buy something else. How will these 2 different assets perform? And it's not just about the thing that you own, it's about what you can put that money into. And this is this concept of opportunity cost of capital that is just so high in this market. And that's the thing, like, you know, if you are bullish on Solana, you don't own Solana, and you're sitting there on, I don't know, something else, Cardano, and it hasn't moved yet, you know, there's a good chance Solana goes up 50% in a few weeks and Cardano stays the same. And you may realize that, but you're so anchored to wanting Cardano to go higher, it's emotionally that it skews, you know, and blurs your vision of, and your ultimate goal of making money and making profits. And I think it's important to just try and conduct that analysis without this like emotional attachment, and just mentally accept, like, I might sell this thing and it might go up, but I just have to move on. And maybe a way to get around that is like, don't sell the whole thing, sell 50% of it, or 75% of it and leave yourself a little bit. So if it does go up, you still benefit from it partially.
There was a great line in one of the My Life in Four Trades episodes, something like admitting defeat of a well-formed argument, that well-formed argument, but it's a well-formed argument. And I just thought that was such a brilliant takeaway. We've got a lot of trades coming in. So actually, I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we have people in the live session adding to the questions that Bijan, our community manager, had already taken from our team. So Mando, to you for this one. This is Adam from our Pro Crypto tier. He says, underwater on WIF, W-I-F, WIF and Bowden. Thoughts on recovery later this cycle or tax loss harvest? No?
Depends how far he's down, if I'm honest. I would say that, as I just said before, the Solana meme coin sector has really taken a battering over the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, maybe. I would say pretty much every coin is down 60 or 70%. That being said, like Bowden is not down that much. It's kind of near its all-time high. So you must have really bought it close to the high there. I like the meme coin sector still right now on a recovery. I think those two are probably memes which will last. I would say if you own anything kind of second or third tier, I'd really be more worried. But I think those two have kind of defined a lot of this cycle. So I still think those can be good stories. I wouldn't lose hope on either of those. Like if you own some altcoin which hasn't performed all year and now it's down again, I'd be worried. But those two, I can see them running back to all-time high or near all-time high for sure.
OSF, shout if you have a different view there.
Completely agreed.
All right, we're going to move on to a question from Ava. Big shout out to Ava again. She's on the website right now. I'm 50% ETH, 40% Solana, 10% Degen bag. Would you say I'm well positioned to grab good exponential growth? Exponential growth. Should crypto summer pan out by the end of the year? Thanks a bunch, OSF.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. People talk a lot about the Solana Bitcoin barbell, but I just think that trade has already played out. And I kind of much prefer the Solana ETH barbell. I think ETH, probably the ETH ETF gets rejected in May, but you still have that as a potential tailwind within the next few weeks or months afterwards. I think we will see an ETH catch-up trade later in the year, and we've already all expressed our bullish views on Solana. So I really like that weighting. I really like having your two majors as ETH and Solana, and then having your Degen bag. And that's kind of how I'm set up as well. Like those are my two main majors. Then I have my Degen stuff. If you want to get exponential returns, or you want to get a bit riskier, maybe knock it down to 40, 40, and 20 as ratios. And I think you do have at the current prices of the market, you do have a good dip on higher beta alts, I think, to get into that trade. So if you want to up the risk dial a little bit more and chase some more returns, then maybe consider another 10% into the Degen bag. But I really, really like that setup, I would say.
Mando also 40, 40, 20.
Yeah, I guess I'm still less bullish on ETH. OSF and me and him have kind of debated that one a lot. I still think Bitcoin's got a great story. I would probably own more Bitcoin than I would ETH. I still think Solana's a great story, but I do think about 20% for Degen is right where you should be. At least in my opinion. I'm probably slightly higher on that bag, but I think at least having some sort of a slice there, and then having really just the main L1s as your beta play, I think is a good. What I would say is I like that. It's probably not my A plus portfolio, but it's definitely not like a D portfolio. I would say that's like I can understand why someone would have that.
Mark on the RV website says, guys, I FOMO'd into XRP at the end of the 2021 bull run before I really learned anything about crypto, trading, markets, etc. I was thinking of selling at a 50% loss and rotating into something else. What do you see for XRP in this bull run? And what do you think will outperform it? Well-formed question, OSF.
Yeah, I would just take the 50% loss, take the tax loss, and move it into something as simple as Solana or even Bitcoin. I think for me, XRP falls into the old coin category, and old coins just never really become the stellar performers of a new cycle unless they have an amazing narrative. And when I say that, don't trick yourself into thinking this has an amazing narrative. It has to be like a 20 out of 10 narrative that every single crypto reporter and press and Twitter is talking about all the time. Like, if your Twitter feed is not filled with the narrative that you think should be 20 out of 10, it's not even 5 out of 10. And so without that narrative on an old coin, I really think shifting to something new. And the most simple thing to do, I really think, is just to sell XRP for Solana. And you may look at that, look at the price action on both of them and think, oh, this is such bad levels to do it. I don't want to do it. But, I had the same thing with Solana versus ETH. And, it took me until probably December or January to rotate some out of some ETH into Solana. But despite feeling and being late to it, it was still a good trade and has been a very good trade up until now. So, I just think, like, don't fade the new narratives and don't get stuck in the old narratives, and don't be afraid to make those changes, even if those levels look unfavorable on a chart. Just remember that chart's not yet finished and there's more to come possibly.
Yeah, and just a reminder to folks that both of you did our Beginners Crypto Academy course for us. So if you haven't seen that, check that out, because a lot of what you guys are talking about here, if you're just getting in, this will really help you out. We still have a few more to get from the site, so just want to make sure we get to all of these. Mando Sri on the RV platform says, what are your thoughts on investing in the NEAR protocol, NEAR protocol?
Yeah, so I think that's got a slightly more interesting narrative this cycle. It's got kind of an AI angle to it. It's the tokenomics, I think, it's kind of an oldish coin, so the tokenomics aren't terrible. And it has that one game on it, which means it has a bunch of different users. I would say that that's not a terrible L1 to play, and particularly because AI as a narrative has been pretty strong so far this cycle. It's definitely taken a beating over the last couple of months, at least the last month, the AI narrative. But up until then, it was the best performing narrative in all of crypto. I like L1s in general. I think that they generally don't completely die. And I think the FTV is probably still under 10 billion, right? So I would say that's an interesting alt L1 to play. It's probably not my favorite, because although it does have users for like one app on NEAR, it's not got tons of users on there doing lots of different things. But I wouldn't discount their ability to potentially have other apps come, or particularly play that AI narrative stronger than they have been. I know that they were at the NVIDIA conference last month. So I would say that's in my I'm looking at it bucket. I don't own any. I probably think there are stronger L1s even to play. But again, I don't think it's a terrible one to have as a beta in this market.
OSF, you know Mando best. When he says interesting, does interesting mean not so interesting?
No, it does mean interesting. It means you've provoked a thought in his mind that is not something that he was perhaps expecting. So I think I would say it's a positive reaction, I would say.
Yeah, like if you said XRP to me, I'd be like, get out. If you said if you're saying NEAR to me, I'd be like, you got a shot. I'm not saying you got a great shot, but like I can understand why you own it.
Ovi, you feel similarly? A shot?
Yeah, I would agree with Michael. Yeah,
nice. Just to take one step back, Ralph Humphrey reminding me of who said that famous quote. It was Hugh Henry who said, "The arrogance and conceit of a well-formed argument." Maggie Lake says she wants that on a t-shirt. Jumping to the next one, OSF John on the RV platform says, how would you rank the most popular meme coins by tier? Upside potential versus risk. With Brett, Shib, Doge, and a few Epic and other ones. How would you size and manage your bets if you have a high risk appetite? Quite specific there.
What was the second coin that you mentioned? Sorry, you said with and then
with Brett, BRET.
Oh, Brett, yeah.
Doge, MOG, Epic. I'll put it in the chat so you guys can see it as well and get a visual.
Yeah,
as you think that over.
Yeah, so I think SHIB and Doge are like your large caps. I think between them, you probably just need to pick one. I think you need to pick Doge. Doge is kind of like the Bitcoin of memes, right? So that's something where I think the all-time high market cap was about $100 billion or close to, or maybe I think $80 billion it topped out at last cycle. So that has some upside. Personally, I think within that group of coins that you mentioned, I personally wouldn't own any SHIB or Doge. I think the play is to own something like WIF, which has the potential to become like a SHIB or Doge. I think by now that's become a pretty large cap meme coin, which has shown strong resilience and good volumes and a lot of liquidity. And so the play on something like WIF is like, can it go from this $3 billion market cap to the 20 and 30 and 40 and $50 billion that we saw of last cycle, which from the levels now is still potentially at least a 10x. So I think it allows you to play that with a larger amount of capital because it's not just going to get rugged, tomorrow, for example, and then it's going to stick around for a while. I think you want to maybe position yourself to having this guy says high risk, so I'm going to say position yourself to having 40 or 50% or something like that, and then something like Brett I think is a fantastic play on it. I like the way that he's positioned himself by having different coins on different ecosystems to have an exposure to Solana and Blast, and Base and ETH. And so I think between Base, Mog, that's probably the next. Brett and Mog, that's probably the next tier where they're kind of between $50 to $200 million market caps, and you're playing for tier one exchange listings to get those things to closer to $1 billion, or if you have an overall meme coin rally, I think you're playing to get to close to $1 billion, which I think is very possible. I like those trades as well. I like Mog in particular because that's been around since August, so that's another one that's demonstrated its ability to actually survive multiple mini cycles, which I think is very important for meme coins. And then Epic is going to be your highest risk bucket trade. But the only thing I would say is that there are very few meme coins in the world where someone that has created it and is not going to just walk away from it tomorrow, who, whether he likes it or not, has his reputation inextricably linked to it. So I do really like that trade. I think there are not that many asymmetric opportunities in the market. I would size it accordingly because smaller market cap things are less liquid and have less liquidity, but as a percent, the liquidity as a percentage of its market cap, and that one is I think 6 or 7%, which is a lot higher than many other meme coins out there. So that's certainly one that I like a lot. And if you're trying to go high risk, then gotta keep quacking.
We're almost at the hour mark, but I just want to get a few more in and we'll wrap things up. Norman on YouTube, how do you feel about Avalanche, Mando?
So Avalanche on that tier of L1s, I think is a stronger point. I think I'd prefer to own Avalanche than I would to own Near. They've built a decent ecosystem across DeFi, even NFTs, a bunch of different apps, and the whole subnet way of scaling. I think is interesting. It is still a little bit like last cycle's L1. And Solana's kind of eaten its lunch in terms of growth this cycle. But it generally was running when Solana ran. So I would be unsurprised if that goes back to kind of 50-ish area. I think I'd prefer to own that than Near. I prefer to own Solana than both of them. And I prefer, XRP is definitely at the bottom.
And then lastly, Brad on the RV platform, thoughts on MATIC, MATIC, seeing some decent numbers for project users. It's generally cheap to use, but it has not really run yet. I've been accumulating over the past 2 to 3 weeks. My time horizon is this cycle, OSF.
I think MATIC goes back to this theme that seems to be very common. It's actually interesting to hear very similar questions across this, which often has been, I own X coin from last cycle that did well last cycle. Can it do well this cycle? And I think MATIC falls into that bucket. The good thing about MATIC is I think the tokenomics are actually pretty good compared to the other stuff. So I think it's all pretty much vested. And
it's owned by the foundation, I think now. It looks like it's vested, but the foundation own it, so it's a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. So you're battling that, and I think the problem with MATIC is you have tons of ETH L2s now, right? You have Arbitrum, you have Optimism, you have Blast, you have Manta, you have all these different L2s. So it's like, it's not a case of like, are MATIC's numbers growing or not, but it's a case of how is MATIC doing versus how's Polygon doing versus all these other L2s, which are also linked to how well ETH is doing because they become the beta of ETH. So I wouldn't pick, if I had an L2 coin on ETH, it would be because I'm bullish on Ethereum and I want to own an L2 for ETH beta. So the first question is I would ask myself is that. And then the second thing I would do is that if the answer to that is yes, I would pick a new L2 coin, which has a newer narrative and which has a lot more hype. And whether that's like putting your ETH onto Blast to farm Blast, which will be a brand new token next month. I think that's a much stronger like L2 trade than owning MATIC, for example.
Guys, this has been an incredible session. I love the way that you guys have fleshed this out, and I love the confidence that you have because you know you're steeped in this without the arrogance that we too often hear in this space. So it's just great to be on with you guys. The banter from the community is absolutely amazing to see how folks respond to you. We mentioned we have something special we want to share with folks. If you've enjoyed this session, I think you'll definitely want to get on the wait list. You see right below here, you can scan that QR code or go to realvision.com/waitlist. So from a rainy London up to Birmingham, or as I used to say when I got to the UK, Birmingham, and over to you in Portugal, Mando. Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We've got the next session of the Festival of Learning coming up, where the team behind Don't Fuck This Up is going to explain how to create a meme coin. So thanks for watching and listening, and see you guys soon.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.